Out beyond the nebulae, they thought their peaceful sector would remain untouched forever. No pirates, no warlords, no cosmic plagues. They sang songs of safety under their shimmering twin suns. But when the darkness came, raiders with planet-crushing weapons and unstoppable biological swarms, they realized too late that their peace was an illusion. And in their final, desperate plea for help, humanity answered. We didn't come with flowery words or empty treaties. We came armed with centuries of hard-earned survival tactics, cunning strategies, and an unbreakable spirit. Because humans, we don't just survive. We write the playbook for survival, and this time, we're teaching the entire galaxy. They believed their sector was safe, nestled in the crook of a spiral arm, shielded by vast ion storms and magnetic waves that tore apart stray meteors and pirate scouts alike. The local species called themselves the Marathi, graceful beings with translucent scales and delicate horns curling like young vines. Their society had blossomed under the assumption that no enemy could possibly reach them, that the galaxy's horrors would always pass them by. They held concerts under starlight, their voices vibrating in gentle, shimmering harmony. They wove sky tapestries from charged dust streams, gifting each new generation the patterns of their ancestors. Their history was an endless poem, a soft chant of sunrise and harvest, never once interrupted by violence or even the idea of an invader. They did not build armies. They did not design shields. They saw weaponry as a stain upon the soul. So when the first shockwave hit, when fragments of a mining moon slammed into their outer habitat stations, they did not even recognize it as an attack. They thought it was a cosmic accident, some freak collision, until the raiders arrived behind the rubble. Biomechanical monsters with claws the size of landing platforms, eyes like pits of molten iron, their hulls dripping in acid spores that devoured all metal. The Marathi's orbital gardens wilted instantly. Their crystal symphonies snapped in the vacuum. Entire generations tried to send out songs of peace, glowing drones broadcasting harmony, but the raiders simply tore them apart, disassembling their every defense in seconds. Panic overtook the golden cities. The elders, who had never even heard the word for evacuation, wept in their courtyards. Parents hid their children inside fragile glass towers, hoping somehow the monsters would overlook them. By the time the first distress pulse reached human space, dozens of Marathi colonies had already become burning cinders, or worse, twisted biomass farms for the raiders' endless breeding cycle. Humans heard the signal, a shivering thread of music-encoded binary, almost too beautiful to interpret. But one human captain, Elias Rune, felt something shift deep inside him. He leaned forward on his bridge console, his rough fingers curling around the data stream as if he could hold it close to his chest. Humans knew danger. Our earliest ancestors survived tooth and claw, volcano and ice, countless wars and self-made catastrophes. We were forged in survival, and perfected it long before we ever touched the stars. The Federation Council urged caution. The Marathi were isolated. They said, not strategic, not valuable. But Rune ignored every broadcast, every warning. He gathered his crew on the hangar deck, rough engineers, ex-farmers turned pilots, young tacticians raised on old Earth survival manuals. I'm not leaving them to be eaten alive, Rune said, his voice echoing against the cold steel walls. We all know what it means to watch a monster crawl over your fence. To know your neighbor's screams mean they didn't make it. We are humans, we don't run from that. We fix it. And they all nodded, not one doubting. Because to be human is to be defiant in the face of death itself, and to teach the universe what true survival means. They rigged old colony haulers with repulsor cannons, mined asteroid belts for raw alloy to weld onto thin starship hulls, converted outdated grain transports into makeshift shield ships. While other species might wait decades to design a proper defense doctrine, humans worked around the clock. 3 hours of sleep, meals eaten standing up beside roaring plasma welders. They taught each other on the fly. One woman from Mars wrote a whole new pulse beacon software in 2 nights. An engineer from Luna redesigned the gun turrets, using scrap from abandoned mining rigs. They patched each other's burns, traded oxygen tanks, passed metal mugs of nutrient broth like ancient soldiers sharing a final campfire. When they finally emerged from hyperspace near the Marathi core world, Rune's ragtag fleet looked like a swarm of angry locusts, battered, armored in mismatched panels, bristling with every imaginable weapon. And the Marathi looked up from their burning cities and saw hope for the first time since the sky had turned red. Rune's flagship descended first, crashing through the acidic storm clouds. His voice boomed across every public channel. You are not alone. You will never be alone again. We brought the playbook, and today you learn to survive. Marathi citizens huddled in what was left of the amphitheaters, seeing human soldiers sprint past with heavy energy shields, constructing quick barricades, welding power lines straight into public squares to run force fields. Rune's lieutenants pulled trembling Marathi out of shattered buildings, pressed rifles into their hands, awkward, thin fingers curling around alien triggers, and taught them to stand guard. Humans crawled through every corridor, extinguished fires, triaged injuries. They broadcast battle songs in low bass vibrations, rhythms that drove away the bone-deep terror and replaced it with resolve. An old Marathi mother, her scales blackened by smoke, watched a young human medic press a breath mask over her grandchild's muzzle, his hands trembling with exhaustion, but his eyes sharp with fierce determination. She wept not for fear, but for a warmth she had never felt, the fierce, irrational love of a species that refused to surrender even when every rational voice said to run. Out on the fields, human engineers spiked the ground with sonic mines, creating barriers that forced raider ground troops into narrow kill lanes. Makeshift gun towers rose overnight, built from fallen temple columns and repurposed grav projectors. Young Marathi watched the humans build, and something began to change inside them. They stopped chanting peace songs to the sky and started whispering human survival mantras. We hold the line. We shield the weak. No one dies today. In hidden bunkers, Rune laid out maps and diagrams drawn on scraps of metal, showing the young Marathi tacticians how to funnel enemies, how to rig choke points, how to feint and strike with speed. Marathi horns, once symbols of gentle wisdom, now glinted with utility, bent to support armor plates, reinforced to carry charge packs. On the third night, as thunder cracked over a smoldering cityscape, Rune addressed a crowd of Marathi survivors. You believed you were safe because no one ever tested you, he said, his voice raw from shouting orders all day. But true safety isn't isolation, it's knowing you can fight back and win. You can't sing away the monsters. You must outthink them, outlast them, outfight them. You can't ask the universe to leave you alone. You must teach it to respect you. A hush spread through the ranks. Even the smallest Marathi children pressed forward, eyes glimmering under their transparent scales. Rune took a breath, looking each of them in the eye. We humans, we wrote the playbook on survival. We've been writing it since the first time we lit a fire to chase away the darkness. And now we're giving it to you. A young Marathi stepped forward then, her horns newly plated, an old ceremonial robe shredded and tied into makeshift armor. She dropped to one knee, a human gesture she had learned from a mechanic fixing rooftop arrays. Commander Rune, she said, her voice trembling but strong, teach me. Let me fight with you. Rune pulled her to her feet at once, grasping her hands, a universal sign among humans of solidarity, of shared burden. You will not just fight with me, he said. You will fight for every star that deserves to shine free. And so they began to train in earnest. The Marathi learned to load coil rifles, to set traps, to hide in shadows and strike like predators. They learned human humor, dark jokes that stung like fresh wounds, but healed you at the same time. They learned to swear creatively, to slap each other on the back before a dangerous sortie, to drink victory soup even if it tasted like hot metal and defeat. For the first time in their luminous, music-filled history, the Marathi felt the fire in their bones, the spark that had carried humans from fragile caves to the farthest planets. They felt the beat of the human heart, defiant, unstoppable, wild. On the final night before the big counteroffensive, Rune watched from a balcony overlooking the refitted city. Marathi scouts darted between barricades. Families shared meals beside plasma turrets. Even the old ceremonial bards now carried heavy repeater pistols. A young Marathi child, her scales still soft and shimmering, tugged at Rune's coat. Human leader, she chirped. Why do you help us? You could have left us to die. Rune knelt, placing a hand gently on her small shoulder. Because we know what it's like to think no one is coming, he said softly. But humans, we always come. We don't turn away from the cry in the dark. We go toward it because somewhere once someone did the same for us. The child leaned forward, her forehead resting against his. Then she darted off into the twilight, shouting to her friends that the final plans were ready, that they would fly tomorrow. Rune stood again, looking up at the broken stars, feeling the trembling anticipation ripple through the entire sector. He knew what was coming would not be easy. They would lose friends. They would feel the sharp edge of despair again. But the humans had already taught them the most powerful lesson. Survival wasn't about never feeling fear. It was about standing back up when fear knocked you down, about linking arms and walking straight into the storm. Tomorrow they would fight. Tomorrow they would finish writing this new chapter together, in blood, in laughter, in defiant, unyielding hope. Tomorrow they would show the galaxy that safety didn't come from hiding, it came from standing together unbreakable. And for the first time in eons, the Marathai no longer sang only of peace, they sang of victory. The dawn before the final push arrived like a hesitant breath. Soft blue light trickled through broken towers, catching on the hastily strung power cables and newly welded barricades. The Marathai warriors, once graceful singers and artists, stood side by side with the humans, their horns gleaming with combat metal, their delicate hands now steady on rifle grips. Rune walked among them, offering small nods, touching shoulders, exchanging quick, fierce smiles. His crew did the same. They didn't see alien civilians anymore. They saw fellow soldiers, fellow survivors. The human engineers finished laying the last of the seismic charge lines under the main causeway. When triggered, it would collapse the entire upper boulevard, funneling the enemy into pre-sighted artillery lanes. By the main defense gate, the young Marathai who had first asked Rune to train her waited, her robe fully transformed into tight-fitting battle gear. A new badge, hammered from human hull scrap, glimmered on her chest. Rune stopped before her, gesturing at the badge. "That's your own mark now," he said. "You've earned it 100 times over." She raised her chin proudly. "I won't fail you." Rune smiled. "No, you won't fail yourself. And that's more important." Above them, the radar echoes confirmed what they all knew. The raiders were coming. An unending black tide of organic metal, crawling and twitching as it crept through the upper orbit. Hundreds of spore cannons charged up, preparing to blast acid hail on the city's remaining strongholds. But this time, the Marathai weren't waiting to be devoured. Rune signaled the shield towers to power up. The once ceremonial sky lattice, used for weaving songs, now projected overlapping energy domes. Shock troops took up positions in hastily constructed sniper nests, each decorated with personal charms, tiny hanging chimes, or tattered human flags. The first salvo of spore missiles splashed against the shields in sizzling clouds of green fire. Marathai gunners, guided by human advisors, returned fire in tight, disciplined volleys. Cannon after cannon fell from the sky, cut in half by crackling blue beams. When the ground forces landed, huge bioengines screeching, they rushed forward, expecting easy prey. Instead, they slammed into coordinated crossfire, sonic mines detonating beneath them, energy nets pinning their forward lines. Marathai warriors leaped from concealed positions, horns swinging like war picks, their elegant singing voices now twisted into ferocious battle cries that echoed across the burning streets. Rune led the central assault group, plasma blade in one hand, short-range blaster in the other. At his side, his ragged human squad and the young Marathai commander advanced in lockstep, clearing tunnel networks and sniping acid droppers from rooftops. Every few minutes, Rune shouted reminders. Check each other's air seals. Watch the flanks. But he hardly needed to. The Marathai had learned fast, painfully but completely. They worked in pairs, always covering each other, always pulling wounded back to medics. In a side alley, Rune and the young commander were ambushed by a towering raider bioconstruct. Its claws scraped concrete, acid glands hissing. The young Marathai hesitated, her hand shaking on the rifle. Rune stepped in front of her without a thought, firing into the beast's eye cluster, even as corrosive sludge splashed his armor. Then, roaring in shared fury, the Marathai girl found her courage. She leaped forward, ramming her horns straight into the monster's neural cluster. Together, they toppled it, the impact cracking the surrounding walls. She stumbled back, trembling, but Rune grabbed her arm. "You did it!" he yelled over the deafening shrieks. I acted without singing," she gasped, her scales flickering pale in shock. Rune pulled her into a rough embrace, his bloodied helmet clinking against her horn. "You sang with your heart instead of your throat. That's all that matters." Across the sector, the combined human Marathai forces advanced, block by block. The air shimmered with plasma discharges, but also with the steady rhythm of human tactical beats broadcast citywide. Makeshift drums and percussion units hammered out syncopated codes, to move, to flank, to hold the line. For the first time in galactic history, an entire alien culture fought with a human heartbeat. Hours bled together into a single rolling wave of explosions, howls, and battle songs. In the final push toward the Raiders' hive nexus, a spore tower the size of a mountain, Rune's fleet began orbital bombardment, hammering the biostructures into smoldering craters. On the ground, the young Marathai commander took the vanguard, leading a wedge formation into the hive entrance. Behind her, human marines unleashed incinerator jets, sweeping corridors clean. When they reached the central spore chamber, a heaving, luminous pit, she raised her rifle and fired into its core. The final echoes of the hive's death scream reverberated like a twisted, dying whale song. Outside, the sky cleared slowly, the storm clouds parting as the last raider ships fell. The city lay broken, but it stood. In the following hours, survivors poured from bunkers and tunnels, gathering around shattered plazas. Human medics and Marathai healers moved together, patching wounds, sharing food and water. Rune emerged from the hive site with the young commander beside him, both filthy, armor torn, but eyes bright with an unquenchable fire. A hush fell as they approached. Rune stepped onto a fragment of a fallen sculpture, lifting his helmet to reveal his scarred, sweat-streaked face. This is how we survive," he said, voice hoarse but strong enough to carry. "Not by building bigger walls, not by praying monsters pass us by, but by standing together, teaching each other, fighting for every inch of life we claim. Survival is not a gift, it's a choice." The young Marathai commander stepped forward, lifting her rifle above her head. "We sang of peace," she called, her voice rippling over the crowd. "Now we sing of defiance. We sing of standing shoulder to shoulder, even when the night howls and the sky burns. We sing of humans who taught us that no terror can swallow us if we refuse to kneel." A roar erupted. Human and Marathai throats joined as one. Hands reached up, fists clenched. Children clambered onto shoulders, eyes wide and bright. At the city's edge, Rune's engineers began rebuilding power grids. Marathai artisans helped them shape new defensive structures, elegant, sculpted, yet functional, integrating song crystals as resonators for energy shields. The surviving human fleet didn't leave. They stayed to help, teach, and learn. Trade began almost immediately, alloy for song crystals, healing spores for biofoam. Within weeks, Marathai warrior cadets joined human boot camps, learning zero-gravity combat and survival drills. Human children attended Marathai song academies, learning harmony as deeply as they knew pulse rifle cleaning routines. A new shared anthem began to spread, part human drums, part Marathai crystal harmonies, a sound no one had ever heard before, fierce and gentle all at once. It echoed across new marketplaces, drifted into rebuilt gardens, and hummed through the hulls of the newly shared fleet. Years later, on the anniversary of the battle, Rune stood beside the young Marathai commander, now a respected general in her own right. "You know," Rune said, watching the new generation sparring in the courtyard below, "we came here thinking we had to save you." She tilted her horned head toward him, her scales glittering in the starlight. "And you did." He shook his head slowly. "We didn't just save you. You saved us too, reminded us why we keep fighting, why we choose to keep building instead of just surviving." The general smiled, leaning against him in a gesture she'd once learned from humans, comfortable, unguarded. "We wrote the survival playbook together now," she said softly. Rune nodded, a quiet pride swelling in his chest. "And no monster will ever forget it." Above them, the newly formed joint fleet roared off toward the stars, no longer merely watchers of the night, but guardians, scouts, builders. They carried the songs of two worlds now, the starlit poems of the Marathai, woven into the war drum heartbeat of humanity. 1,000 light years away, other civilizations would soon hear this new music, a promise, a warning, a celebration. They would learn that peace is precious, but true peace lives only beside the will to defend it. And in every corner of the galaxy, under every different sky, they would whisper in awe. They believed their sector was safe, but humans wrote the playbook on survival. And somewhere deep among the stars, in that shared rhythm of song and thunder, two species carried forward, not just alive but unbreakable. Together,